Having beer with friends on Saturday night or swiping right on Tinder for date, it feels natural. It feels like this is just how humans exist and always existed. But it's not. We might be the first generation where all of our needs fulfilled by technology, giving us luxury to forget about ourselves and not to worry about survival, food, shelter and security. All of this is more or less taken for granted. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Back then, it was far from inhabitable as possible. The conditions on Earth were really hellish due to supernova radiation. During that time, Earth was so hot that it started to melting, and heavy elements such as iron melt and went into the Earth's center, and light elements come above the Earth's surface. At this time, rotation speed of the Earth was so high that it was 15 hours a day. At this time, Earth's atmosphere was mostly nitrogen, carbon dioxide, methane and water vapor. Over time, Earth get colder, the water vapor cooled as well and fell down in the form of rain. Life on Earth began as single-cell organism. The ocean were populated by anaerobic microbes. Somewhere between 2.5 to 3.5 billion years ago, one of the microbial species probably floating on the surface of the ocean evolved a new ability, photosynthesis. Structured in the cell membrane, could harness the energy from sunlight to turn carbon dioxide and water into oxygen gas and sugar, which they could use for energy. These organisms were the ancestor of what we now call cyanobacteria. They could now produce their own energy from an endless supply of raw ingredients. So their populations exploded and they started to polluting the atmosphere with a new waste product, oxygen. At that time, methane was the highest in the atmosphere. Methane and oxygen form carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, but it was in a small amount. Greenhouse effect was not that effective, due to which the earth turned into snowball for the next 300 million years. During this time, due to an increase in oxygen, the ozone layer becomes strong. Because of this, now the chances of life on the surface of the earth started increasing. Slowly carbon dioxide began to rise. Earth was once again back to normal. Today, no matter where we look on the tree of life, most cell machinery is made of protein chains of folded amino acids. The earth was formed largely out of the heavier elements including carbon and oxygen. Somehow some of these atoms come to be arranged in the form of molecules of DNA. Linking the two chains in the helix are pair of nitrogenous bases. Now, we do not know how DNA molecules first appeared, as the chances against a DNA molecules arising by random fluctuations are very small. Some people have suggested that life come to Earth from elsewhere, for instance brought here on rocks breaking off from Mars while the planets were still unstable, and that there are seeds of life floating around in the galaxy. However, it seems unlikely that DNA could survive for long in the radiation in space. There is fossil evidence that there was some form of life on Earth about 3.5 billion years ago. This may have been only 500 million years after the Earth becomes stable and cool enough for life to develop. But life could have taken 7 billion years to develop in the universe and still have time left to evolve to being like us, who could ask about the origin of life. If the probability of life developing on a given planet is very small, why did it happen on Earth in about 1/4 of the time available? The early appearance of life on Earth suggests that there is a good chance of spontaneous generation of life in suitable conditions. Maybe there was some simpler form of organism which built up DNA. Once DNA appeared, it would have been so successful that it might have completely replaced the earlier forms. We do not know what these earlier forms would have been, but one possibility is RNA. RNA is like DNA, but rather simpler, and without the double helix structure, short length of RNA could reproduce themselves like DNA and might eventually build up to DNA. We cannot make this nucleic acid in laboratory from non-living material, but given 500 million years and ocean covering most of the earth, there might be a reasonable probability of RNA being made by chance. The process of biological evolution was very slow at first. It took about 2.5 billion years from the earliest cells evolved into multicellular organisms. But it took less than another billion years for some of these to evolve into fish, and for some of the fish evolve into mammals. The evolution seems to have speeded up even more. It took only about 100 million years to develop from the earliest mammal to us. The reason is that early mammals already contained their version of the essential organs we have. All that was required to evolve from early mammals to human was a bit of fine-tuning. But with the human race, evolution reached a critical stage comparable in importance with the development of DNA. This was the development of language, and particularly written language. It meant the information could be passed on from generation to generation other than genetically through DNA. There has been some detectable change in DNA brought about by biological evolution in the last 10,000 years of recorded history. But the amount of knowledge handed on from generation to generation has grown enormously. The DNA in a human egg or sperm contains about 3 billion base pair of nitrogenous bases. However, much of the information coded in this sequence seems to be redundant or is inactive. So the total amount of useful information in our genes is probably something like 100 million bits. One bit of information is the answer to a yes no question. Now we entered in Darwinian phase which lasted about 3.5 billion years and produced us, being who developed language to exchange information. We may be no stronger or inherently more intelligent than our caveman ancestors, but what distinguishes us from them is the knowledge that we have accumulated over the last 10,000 years, and particularly over the last 300 years. There is no time to wait for Darwinian evolution to make us more intelligent and better natured, but we are now entering a new phase of what might be called self-designed evolution, in which we will be able to change and improve our DNA. Our current based genome editing technology is CRISPR. It allows researchers to easily alter DNA sequences and modify gene functions. Its many potential applications include correcting genetic defects, treating and preventing the spread of disease, and improving crops. However, its promise also raises ethical concerns. If you want to read more about CRISPR, there are a few links in the description below. The idea that life was delivered to Earth on space rock, which goes by the awesome name panspermia, well, there is no proof it ever happened, and it doesn't really explain the origin of life anyway. It just moves it somewhere else. There's still quite a few gaps to fill in this story, and if you are looking for a nice, neat answer for how life started, you're probably not going to find it. Life is just a thing that happens, is still happening today, and it will evolve and continue as long as there is a place it can happen. Peace.